Hey guys, I'm John. Welcome back to my channel. I am here in Linden, Alberta with my big blue, beautiful Alberta flag showing my support for Alberta independence, and I'm going for a walk with my wife and Kristy. We met on X and we're going to talk about something really important today.
Yes.
So, well, let's just get right into it.
Sure.
Gracias, mi amor. So the big issue, we see the Chiefs walking around with the King of England. How do you feel about that? Maybe actually first let's get to know each other a little bit.
Sure.
So where did you grow up? What's your story?
I'm born and raised in Alberta. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta.
Okay.
I am from Treaty 8. I am a status treaty Indigenous.
Yeah.
I am a 60 scoop.
Okay.
So those who are familiar with residential schools, after the residential schools, they still did not believe that Indigenous families could raise their children. So they removed children and placed them into families. I hate to say white families because I'm sure they weren't all white. But they were not our families. So my sister and I were taken at the age of 2 and 3.
Wow.
And told by our adopted family. Took 3 years for the adoption to go through.
Yeah.
Our adopted family told us that our Indigenous family didn't want us.
Did they split you guys up or did they keep you together?
No, it is a miracle. And after all these years, in the last 10 years, I've just realized how much of a miracle it is that my sister and I were able to stay together.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. In the last 10 years, actually 16 years now, today is actually the anniversary of my biological mom's death. So today's a very special day.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, God bless her.
And I wish that she was around today to hear what has happened and that it was never her fault.
Right.
It was never her fault that we were never returned to her. And I now know that she actually did fight for us against the Alberta government. Her and my grandmother.
Like what a tragic story. So the government took you guys away.
The Alberta government. Yeah.
What a devastating thing to do to somebody. This was just commonplace. Like, is it true to say that pretty much every Indigenous person in Alberta went through a similar story?
Very similar story.
Wow.
Yes. So I can tell you the history of my family in regards to residential schools.
Yeah.
My grandmother, on my maternal side, her and her sister in Alberta were removed at the age of 2 and 3 and taken to a residential school.
Wow.
It was called Blue Quills.
Yeah.
If you look it up, it looks like it looks like a sanitarium.
Yeah.
My grandmother was 13 years in that school. She never saw her family for 13 years.
So then all I hear about is that these kids were like treated really badly and a lot of them died. Is this?
Yes.
Is this true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the truth is, the abuse and the trauma that occurred in the residential schools is probably beyond our comprehension. My grandmother, I'm told by my aunts and uncles, she never spoke of it, and when she did speak of it, she cried. So her little sister died at the residential school, and she was never brought home. I've asked my family if Caroline was ever brought home, and they said no. And she died at the age of 9.
So, okay, I want to push back here, and I don't mean to be insensitive, but like this big thing happening in Kamloops with the graves that I don't know if they're ever going to start digging there, but a lot of people online are saying, look, you're never going to find bodies because there's nothing there. And it's like,
this is what I'm going to tell Alberta and Canada, is that back then, large buildings and large schools like that were heated by coal. So there was coal furnaces.
They didn't burn the bodies in there, did they?
If there's no bodies beside the schools, they were burned.
No way.
Promise you. Where did my grandmother's sister go then?
See, okay, so I'm kind of right, like, I want the truth to come out. We hear this
So-
truth and reconciliation.
Yeah.
But like, if it's a lie, I want it to stop.
Right.
If it's the truth, I want it to come out. You know?
So my thing is that the residential schools, you cannot debate that happened
Yeah.
in America and North America.
I wouldn't debate that.
That is not a debate. The trauma and the abuse,
Yeah.
to the extent, happened.
Yeah.
Whether there is bodies found beside the schools or not,
Yeah.
it does not take away
No,
from the fact
it
of the
doesn't.
trauma that our ancestors endured.
Right.
And it's very upsetting to an Indigenous person
Yeah.
when people claim that it's based on just finding these bodies.
Yeah. No.
The finding of these anomalies beside the school, what that did is it literally ripped off the blinders over everybody in Canada of the big secret that Canada's been hiding,
Right.
which
yeah.
is residential schools and
Yeah.
what happened in them.
So, and like, I do want to just tell my viewers, like, you support Alberta independence.
100%.
And we're getting to that because I think that's going to be a shock to some people and it'd be like a real hurrah for other people. But I want to tell you my experience with this. So, growing up, I remember my mom and dad talking about the residential schools, and they're like, this is great. These Indigenous people are just, and I don't mean to be insensitive, right? But they would just say, those people need this and it's so good for them. And they were completely clueless. And I'd like to kind of apologize for them, I guess, but like, they didn't know. I think the federal government knew what they were doing, and they were lying to the rest of Canadians, saying, hey, this is good. Look, free schooling for all these people, you know, and
Right.
like, okay,
But
push me back on that.
But did your parents get ripped from their homes
No.
and then put into a school and never to see family ever again? In fact, the grandparents or the mothers and fathers of those children
Yeah.
didn't even know which school their children were taken to.
Yeah.
So a lot of people today
Yeah.
will say, well, why didn't the parents just go get their kids from
Go
the
get 'em.
schools?
Yeah.
Because, again, reservations today are different than what reservations were created for.
Okay.
Reservations 80 years to 100 years ago,
Yeah.
you couldn't leave the reserve unless you had permission. And
you-
if you did,
Yeah.
you were shot.
They would actually shoot you?
Yes. And I can tell you who the original Indian agents that were created
Yeah.
to man the reserves
Yeah.
and police the reserves
Yeah.
was created by the federal government is the RCMP today.
Yeah. So in university, I learned about how the RCMP were critical in policing the reserves, and but I learned it from kind of a perspective of like white guilt, you know. At the same time,
Yes.
like, is this? I try to be skeptical. Like, is this really what happened? But yeah, I don't know.
It's really what happened.
It is. Wow.
It really is. Every Indigenous person in Alberta and Canada knows the truth. The problem is that nobody has ever cared to listen.
Well, I care, and part of the reason why I'm making this video, I want to amplify your voice, and I
Right.
want to educate myself.
Yes.
So thank you for forgiving me for being insensitive sometimes.
No, absolutely. I am a 60 scoop, so this is all stuff that I've learned in the last 16 years.
Yeah.
The history of my family,
Yeah,
the history of my grandmother,
yeah,
the history of my band with the residential schools.
okay.
And I can promise you today that there is not one Indigenous person in Canada that does not feel the effects of the trauma and sorrow
Yeah,
of what's happened in their family.
yeah, I believe it. I mean, I've known lots of Indigenous people over my life, and you know, I've heard these stories many times, but I've had such a different background, you know.
Yes.
I think this is why it's so tempting for a lot of people to have white guilt, I guess. I hate to say that again, but like...
And there isn't, like, and I can say for myself, there isn't white guilt.
Like, I didn't do this to you, and I wouldn't have done it if it would have been my choice.
That's right, and I fully believe that. I fully believe that back then that was the mentality of the government.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church believed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a history that I read up on.
Yeah.
Is that the first leader of Canada?
Yeah.
His name was Sir John A. Macdonald.
Yeah.
Sir John A. Macdonald, back then, you didn't rule for 4 years. He ruled for 74 years.
74 years?
74 years.
Wait, what do you mean?
He ruled as the Prime Minister of Canada.
But 74, 70...
It says 74 years. His belief was that we were savages. His literal words, Sir John A. Macdonald's words, they're savages. And in order to get the savage out of them and
get the savage out of the Indian. That's what, I'll just say it. There's a clip people can cut me up.
The best way to do that is to rip families apart.
What a horrible thing, eh?
To separate the children from the parents.
Yeah.
For us to become civilized.
Okay, so to prepare for this conversation, I read Treaty 8 yesterday.
Yes.
And I read Treaty 7 a few months ago. And there's a preamble, which honestly, I'm going to do a video just reading the treaty. That the preamble to it tells a really fascinating story. But Indigenous people are the subjects of the king.
Yes, we are. And we are their loyal subjects of the king. The
loyal subjects, yeah.
The king and queen back then loved their Indigenous people. In fact, in the treaties, they speak very highly of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this good to be walking in this stuff here? You want to keep trucking through? You want to turn back?
Sure, we can turn back. I thought this would be cleared. Usually this is like completely clear.
Yeah, when we want. Okay, so...
but as you know, from any other country, England didn't ask permission. England, the king at the time, went into any country with his army, because at the time the British army was fierce.
Yeah.
And they just took over countries. They just walked in and said, this is our country now. So it was no different here in Canada in regards to the Indigenous people.
So, okay, so the preamble to Treaty 8 talks about, it almost sets the tone like already, it says that most of them were already Christians. Most of them, they knew about the railroad. The chief in Fort Chipewyan was asking for a railroad to be built there. They knew about farming and agriculture. So it's almost like the treaty was signed way after, like, I'm trying to think about the context that it was signed in, like, because in my mind, like, did they want to do it and did they know what they were doing?
Well, again, it's like today. We have leaders who are for stuff and other leaders who aren't.
Yeah.
And so maybe those leaders at the time were for it. Who knows? Or they could have been bought and paid for. Who knows?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, and they were, because like they knew about the value of money in dollars. And there's a ledger in Treaty 8 that like lists, I think that each chief got like 30 some dollars and everybody else got like 20 or $22.
Right.
Like the chiefs are already getting paid off more, and they got better things, like they got a bull, they got a suit, right? Like, you know, so they got better stuff.
Yes, right? Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess, okay, the leader gets some perks, but maybe that already set the tone of like how this was going to go, that the chiefs... So, okay, are the chiefs elected, or how does it work?
Wow. So... to be honest, I'm just learning about this myself, but we just had a vote last year for the chief and council on my band.
Okay.
There was no, how do you say, proper democracy, what you would think a democratic process would be for electing.
Yeah.
On my reserve specifically.
Yeah.
So it was literally a month before we had the vote. The people were, put it this way, I only knew one person on the chief and council to vote for. I didn't have an idea of any of the other ones. I didn't have an idea of what they stood for.
Did they like
And then
not
all of a
publish
sudden we
it, or-
had the vote.
And so was it like people, like, was it a competition, or was it like there's only one
They were
person?
supposed to go out and do some, they were supposed to, like, some of them went door to door and did, you know, presented themselves and what they believed in.
Okay.
But here's
'Cause-
an example.
Okay.
I do know that one of our chief and council
Uh-huh.
has been on the chief and council for 18 years.
Yeah.
In fact, she used to be the chief.
Huh.
So that's not a correct democratic process, because you're not allowing, it's very suspicious, and it's not allowing for new. Like, you have to allow for new. When you have the same people in power,
Right.
what does that tell you?
Right.
It's corrupt, because you're not allowing for new blood to come in, new perspectives, new ways of doing it.
Yeah. Well, and this is what the big accusation is right now, is that the chiefs are corrupt, and they're, you know, these people who are going to the king right now in the United Kingdom, they're not representing Indigenous people, and their voice, like, they just want to keep padding their pockets. So can you speak more to that?
So I believe, though I don't know this for sure, but just look at a reserve in Alberta.
Yeah.
Just look at a reserve in Alberta and tell me who the chiefs care about.
Yeah.
Because you can go to the chief's house, which is probably not on the reserve,
Yeah.
but you go and look at the reserve and you see how the people live.
It's squalor.
And that will tell you, like, why we need change. We've been doing this for over 100 years, almost 100 years. And we need change. The people live in poverty. My family lives in poverty. I did not grow up on the reserve, but I've been to my reserve.
Yeah.
And I see my aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
And it rips my heart out, because we try and speak, nobody listens.
Yeah. Well, I'm here making your voice louder. I hope that people can hear this. So you're saying that they're corrupt, and a lot of people, like, okay, let's just go with a lot of white people, non-Indigenous, whatever you want to call us, we say, oh yeah, on the internet, you know, they're so corrupt, right?
Yeah.
But
and I hear you. I hear all of Canada saying that they need to be audited. I'm with you.
yeah.
I'm 100% with you. If I could scream at my chief and council to be audited and to give us the financial records,
Yeah.
I would. But
If
I
they
promise
have
you that is happening on one of the reserves in northern Alberta.
Yeah.
And the band and council is using band funds to fight him.
Yeah.
And he took it to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, absolutely, they have to show you the financials.
Yeah.
You have every right as a band member to see every financial dollar that comes in and out of that band.
Yeah.
But of course,
Yeah.
nobody's going to come forward and give you the financials, because what's that going to expose? That's going to expose the corruption.
Yeah. They're going to expose the corruption, and like people who are non-Indigenous, we're terrified to call this out because they're going to call us racists.
That's right.
And that just like shuts the whole
And
conversation
it's not
down.
racist. Right? It's not racist. It's not racist to ask where money's being spent.
No.
And when you look on a reserve and you see people living in poverty and no housing. I have family that have been asking my chief and council for housing. Nothing happens. They don't have houses.
So explain this to me, how this works. Like on a reserve, you don't own your property. The band has to buy you the property and build it for you?
So the band is allotted money. I do believe by the federal government to give housing for their band. What happens with that money?
Yeah.
I don't know what the red tape is with that.
It just disappears.
It's not there.
Yeah.
And it's not being done. And if it's being done for probably band and council members.
Yeah. Well, okay.
There's nothing for our elders. Elders in the Indigenous community, I've learned. I went to a sweat lodge in 2021.
Yeah.
My very first one. And I've learned a little bit about the Indigenous teachings and the Indigenous beliefs. And elders are held in very high regard in Indigenous communities,
Yeah.
except for they're not treated with high regard. And my band alone needs an elders lodge for our elders.
And they haven't built it.
And nothing's built for them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's interesting you say these chiefs live off reserve too. Like, that, you know, that kind of looks suspicious too, right? They're not even in touch with their people, and they're claiming to represent Indigenous people.
and now there's a big divide between on reserve and off reserve. So you, as a member of your reserve, like when you're treaty carrying status, that card tells you you're a band member.
Yeah.
You're a band member of that band.
Yeah.
But within that band, you're either on reserve or off reserve. And if you're off reserve, yeah, there's probably not a lot of help for you.
Yeah.
Not a lot of, you're not really included in a lot of things. They're trying to change it, but again,
Yeah.
they focus. So one of the things is for CFS in regards to Alberta,
Yeah.
with our children.
Child Family Services.
Child Family Services.
Yeah.
I'm currently fighting for a great niece and nephew that I have that's in the system.
Yeah.
And I wrote a letter to my chief and council asking for help. Their words, there's no money for off reserve. That was my answer. Never received nothing back from my chief and council. I since have got 2 elders that actually worked in CFS on board now, so things are going to change hopefully. But I'm only 51 years old.
Right.
I was taken at the age of 3. I have been fighting the system now for over 30 years because Truth and Reconciliation is a joke.
Oh.
It's not really. So Truth and Reconciliation was coined by Harper.
Yeah, it's a very nice phrase.
Harper is the first one that actually came out and apologized because he had no choice.
Yeah.
Because it was being exposed. So he came out and apologized. And him and his constituents came up with 74 Truth and Reconciliation that they were going to mandate in Canada that happened.
Okay.
I believe till today, I believe 4 of those have happened.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's no such thing as Truth and Reconciliation.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a really nice phrase, and I got behind that. I mean, I still want to get behind it. I want to know what the truth is and reconcile. You said you've been fighting the system for your whole life, and you're still now fighting the system because now you support Alberta independence. You've said some pretty strong things online.
Yes. Yes, I support Alberta independence for my people, for my family, for my grandkids. I grew up in Alberta, in central Alberta, western Alberta. I was 10 years old when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was our prime minister. And my adopted family, we were famine. My father was a drilling engineer in Alberta.
Yeah.
And we were famine. There was no money coming in. He couldn't get, I think, EI.
Yeah.
So I remember as a 10-year-old going to work at a farm.
Yeah.
To get money during his years that he was in.
Wow.
So it greatly affected me.
Yeah.
So when it came time for his son, I can promise you I did not vote because I knew what his father did.
Right.
And how his father feels about Alberta.
So, but now back to like the treaties is, I see kind of, well, I guess there's 4 options here. One of them is we could keep the treaties exactly the way they are with the government of Canada. Like, assuming Alberta becomes a republic, the treaties stay exactly the same way. Option 2 is they get transferred to the Republic of Alberta. And essentially nothing changes, just like who the treaty's with.
Right.
Option 3 is completely renegotiate. Right. And I think that would be the best upside for,
Agreed.
you know, and it's like that we could talk about that. And then somebody threw me a fourth option. I don't aspire to this, but to be fair, it's like the 4th option is just completely dishonor the treaties and throw them all out the window. And some people are talking about that too. So
I don't agree with that.
That last one.
The last one.
Yeah, it's a contract. We gotta.
I would agree with it if Indigenous people were treated fairly in Canada and Alberta. I would be for that, because then we would have a fair shake in our lives. But I promise you, today, still, an Indigenous woman is more likely to be assaulted above any other race 6 times more.
Yeah.
And when I walk down the street as an Indigenous person, people don't talk to me or look at me. They literally judge me on my skin because I'm Indigenous. So
I'm sorry,
if we had equality for our, this is why I say Canada was not built on multiculturalism.
Yeah.
Never was.
Yeah.
Ask an Indigenous person, because if we were given a fair shake, then I would be for. But no.
Okay, so I
agree with renegotiating. That needs to happen.
Yeah, my thought is like, okay, everybody knows that these treaties are antiquated and racist, and they don't help Indigenous people and they don't help everybody else. It's like none of that works. And so I think renegotiating is the best option. But the reason I wouldn't throw the treaties away is because what a terrible way to start a new country, right? We want to be open for business, and the first thing we're going to do is like break the biggest contract we have.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, we got to honor our contract. So I'm kind of like, let me run this by you, see what you think. Okay. We do a complex calculation that involves a lot of debate. We find out what the present value of the treaties are, right? How much money is owed. And then we say, here's a chunk of money. And it's like paid out, or like allot the land. Here, take the land. Now you personally own it or something. What do you think?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to clear up something for all of Canada to know.
Okay.
And that is that Indigenous money ever given by the federal government is not taxpayers' dollars. And I'm going to repeat that.
Okay. Whoa.
No taxpayers' dollars have been given to Indigenous people.
That's a pretty strong phrase.
Okay, so there is a trust fund that was created when the original treaties were signed by the king, by the queen.
Oh.
And that money she allotted to her faithful Indian subjects for the royalties from the resources at the time. That money has been collecting and accumulating interest all of these years. We're talking multi-millions, probably billions by now.
I'm gonna have to take your word for that, because I am a little bit skeptical. I've never heard this before.
Okay, but you have heard our government say the constituency fund. Have you heard our government, federal government, ever stand up before us and say, the constituency fund will be covering this, or the constituency fund will allot for this? So
no, but I was looking at like how much we spend on Indigenous services, for example, and like it seems like this is just a regular line item in the federal budget.
So Indigenous services is different.
Oh.
Okay, Indigenous services is completely different. Indigenous services is just it's the people that are running that federal part of the government for the Indian Act. So in fact, I don't even know how many Indigenous people work in Indigenous services. It's all white people that run our stuff.
It's all white people telling you what to do.
That's right. In fact, I took my sons and my niece to go get their treaty status card.
Yeah.
Okay? Because we're the only race that has to prove what our race is to get a little card.
Yeah, what a terrible thing, eh? This is actually a racist system.
Right. So we have to go and prove. So we go to Indigenous Services Canada in Edmonton.
Yeah.
We fill out an application and we send it into Indigenous Services Canada.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna guess is probably not all Indigenous. It's probably mostly white. And they're going to decide if we are enough Indigenous to receive that little card.
And so I've heard this before, that the way the current system is set up, and I'll use the terminology that is the legal term, is like there won't be a treaty Indian left in Canada in 100 years.
That's right. They wanna stop it.
Yeah.
They do want to stop it. And of course we're fighting against that because this is our heritage. This is our lineage.
Fair enough.
And that will always continue. In fact, every Indigenous person that's alive today, including myself, is a warrior.
Right.
And basically a middle finger to the federal government, because you tried to wipe us out. You tried to wipe our ancestors out. I am here today because my grandmother survived
Yeah.
and warriored through the residential school.
Right.
I am here today because my great-grandmother, her entire family was wiped out with
Yeah.
the Spanish flu because 100 years ago,
Yeah.
on reserves, because Indigenous people traveled. They followed their food.
Yeah.
They followed the buffalo. They followed the deer.
Yeah.
They followed their food. And when reservations happened, they couldn't follow their food. And that was their way of life. So they had to change their whole way of life. And at the time in the winters, they were starving.
Yeah.
So the Indigenous people at the time went to the cities and towns and begged for food and blankets. And they gave them tainted blankets with the Spanish flu to take back to the reserves. And it literally almost wiped out all of the Indigenous people.
Yeah.
My grandmother is the only survivor. I'm here today because my grandmother survived the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Literally. Her whole family was wiped out.
I mean, like, I'm not proud of any of that aspect of Canadian history. I kind of look at it like there was a cultural difference back then. Racism was like accepted and it was a different culture. And it's like, but now I want to go forward. And so I'm looking at Alberta independence and I'm thinking, man, okay, renegotiate.
That's right.
What are you thinking? Because like, we seriously want to fix this problem. We don't want to keep dragging it on.
People want to fix the problem.
Yeah.
The people, if we could be given the opportunity to get out of poverty, because let's be honest, poverty is where you rule. If you can rule, if your people are in poverty, they can't rise up. They can't have a voice because they're too deep in poverty to even think.
Yes.
So our reservations is poverty.
Right.
We need to raise them up out of poverty because it's a beautiful culture. And the other thing is if we could get back to our culture and remember the ways of our ancestors, man, this world would be a better place.
Well, I agree.
So would our people.
Now I just want to push back a bit more. I'm going to plow through this snowbank for you so you can walk, by the way. So let me walk ahead and just be a little bit like that. But, okay, so the pushback would be, okay, we want, like, ideally, Indigenous people would be sovereign over their land, maybe. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yes.
And I think, I like how that sounds. But then it's like, do you think there's enough people left who are competent enough to be able to do this properly? You know, like we're talking about corruption on the reserves.
Yeah.
Right? There you go, you can get through that, eh?
Yep.
So like, okay, well, if we make them all sovereign, then really we're just giving all these corrupt chiefs even more power.
Well, I feel like there has to be, right now what's happening is that the fund money, the trust fund money is given to the band, and of course they always give it to the chiefs because that's who the leader of the bands are.
Yeah.
So that's given to them, and then that's it.
And so, okay, so now let's say we renegotiate, and then we're like, here's even more money and power. Now you're sovereign. And then these corrupt people get in there, and then the Indigenous people get screwed again.
Right. So I feel like it has to come from, we have to change I don't know how we would do that, but we'd have to change how it's governed. Like, right now, put it this way, right now the money is given to the chiefs, and then the chiefs are supposed to, and so that's where the corruption's happening.
Right.
So what if we changed it to the money is given, allotted from the trust fund money or whatever, given to the band, but that's to the whole band. And it must be allotted, and every person has a say for everything, for social programs on it, for infrastructure on their band, because right now it's governed only by the chief and council.
Right.
So people try to speak.
Yeah.
But it's like a veto with the chief and council.
Right.
They say they listen, but...
So, but here's the thing. I already anticipate what my audience is going to be saying. Like, they're screaming at the camera right now.
Yes.
Like, giving more money isn't going to solve the problem.
No, giving more money isn't going to solve the problem.
And then also like white people telling Indigenous people what to do, that's not working either. That's never worked.
That's never worked.
We've tried that a bunch of times.
So I don't know what the answer would be. I feel like we do have a lot of people on our individual bands who are very knowledgeable and very know the traditional way. And I feel like if we could, I don't know, get our people back to the traditional ways.
Well, and like you talk about sweat lodges, I've been to a couple of sweat lodges in my life, and it's a really profound experience.
Isn't it?
Like I really, but it's okay. So we give more resources to the cultural leaders, and that seems to be a good thing. But then it's like, okay, right here, right now, we're having a referendum on whether Alberta should separate, and the chiefs are running around saying that Indigenous people are going to get screwed because of this, and you're on the other side of that fence. So like, how do you defend supporting Alberta independence?
So from what I understand is that the treaties follow wherever you are. So the treaties follow. So we don't lose treaty.
No.
It will be recognized by the Republic of Alberta.
I think 99% of us agree with that. I think there's a small percent who say, no, screw the whole thing, start over.
So the fear from the chiefs, that's all that it is. They're trying to rule with fear because the corruption, their pockets are being lined. I'm sorry, it's the truth.
Yeah.
If you are part of the assembly of the, the First Nations Assembly of Canada?
Yeah.
That is literally a liberal, corrupt, and any chiefs that are part of it, which are the ones that went to see the king. Why would you go see a king who literally proved 100 years ago he did not care about us?
Yeah.
So why are you going to ask him for help? Because he's literally laughing behind your back. Like, it's embarrassing because, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's such a, when I see that, okay, I read the Treaty 8 and it said that every year the chiefs are supposed to get a brand new suit. It's actually in Treaty 8. Go read it.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm thinking, man, those chiefs got their suit.
Yep.
They got their suit.
Yep.
And that headdress that they're wearing is beautiful, cultural, right? Where do they keep that?
Do you know how much the band members get every year still from the king?
Like how much?
$5.
They still get $5. Like that's
$5.
what it's. Yeah.
I go to treaty days on my reserve.
Yeah.
$5.
Like they should have negotiated.
$5 100 years ago was a lot of money.
They didn't know what inflation was. Yeah.
But today you can still get your $5.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about treaty days. Actually, my wife and I, we want to go to a powwow.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I've heard a really great powwow, Sutina.
Yeah, Sutina?
Yes. They put a big powwow on it.
Because my wife
and
is...
a huge gathering comes to that one.
She loves that. She sees it and she's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Right, Ali, te gusta los powwow? Bailando de los Indigenous?
Oh, my particular band, we don't do actual powwows. We call them tea dances.
Tea dances?
Yes.
Okay.
I just learned that.
Okay.
Because I can't remember if it was my cousin or my niece was asking about going to, she wanted to go and she's just got her treaty and she wanted to go to a powwow at our band, and my auntie was like, yeah, Dene people don't do powwows.
Okay.
And she was like, oh, okay. She's like, we do tea dances.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're Dene.
I'm Dene.
And now here's something I gotta just confess, I feel like. In the mind of the average ignorant white Canadian, we just think Indigenous are all the same.
No.
There's so many different cultures that we're actually talking about here.
So many different, just like in any culture, there's like different parts of it, different dialects, different languages, different traditions.
Right.
Completely. So the Dene people, very peaceful people. We're called the Plains people.
Okay.
Very peaceful people, loving, kind, peaceful people. Not. Well, and it's and when you go further east, that's where you're gonna get the Iroquois and the Huron. And those particular bands were the warriors and the fighters and the, yeah. So.
Well, and so what I was kind of getting to there is like, I want to see your culture preserved. I genuinely believe that you have a right to preserve your culture, and it's a good thing. And I want my culture to be preserved as well.
Right. I
And
think that's,
like,
yes.
I want for you what I want for myself, and I feel like I'm not allowed to say, "Hey, let's protect my culture." They even say I don't have a culture.
Oh, no, you do.
I have a culture.
You have a culture.
It's a little bit of a weird culture.
But that's okay. You didn't choose it, just like I didn't choose my culture. I didn't choose what color to be born.
And I'm proud of it, and you know, and I think an independent Alberta, I visualize, you know, we're like more personal autonomy, more like sovereignty for individuals and communities. Like here we are this is Linden.
Yes.
There's a lot of Hutterites and Mennonites here.
Yeah.
And so like, I would never come to, everything's shut down here. This is a Sunday. I would never come here and be like, you dang people need to listen to me and do what I say and open all your businesses on Sunday.
That's right.
You know?
Right.
And by the way, that's my culture, is like Mennonite background.
Yeah, yeah.
But.
And I feel like we should be proud of our cultures and our backgrounds. That's what makes us unique. Yeah. And I have never, ever, as much as Canada has tried to make me feel ashamed of my culture, I've never been ashamed of my culture.
No.
I can't change. I did not, when I was born, I did not ask what culture to be born.
Yeah.
I am Indigenous. You know, Canada is one country that has given us so many names. It's ridiculous.
I know. Indian is the legal name. Native, Aboriginal.
So it started out with Indian, then it went to Aboriginal.
Jeez.
So there's so many names. We are Indigenous to all of America, including with North America, America, and South America, Mexico. That's our continent. The whole continent we have, because our ancestors are all Korean.
Yeah.
So.
Now I want to push back and quote Treaty 8, because there's one more mix in there.
Right.
It's the half-breeds. That's what Treaty 8 uses, that exact word. That's not my words. Please don't cut that up. There's half-breeds. So like, this is the mentality that our law was written for.
Right.
And we have this amazing opportunity to change it, to write something that's like not antiquated and racist.
That's right.
And
I prefer to be called Native.
Native?
I prefer America.
Okay.
United States of America will always refer to us as Native Americans.
Native Americans?
So Native is the word that I prefer.
Sure.
And
I'll use that.
That's what I'm known as. If I go to the US, I'm a Native American.
Okay.
Here, I'm Native Canadian.
Okay, well, I'll use Native then from now on in this conversation. I was trained to use Indigenous peoples.
Yes, that's because that's what Canada told us to call it.
Yeah.
We call each other natives.
And my question is like, how many years do we have to be born here, generations, before we're considered Indigenous? Because I got family roots going back a couple hundred years.
That's the other thing, is that it's a whole wording.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not Indigenous to Canada, or that your family wasn't Indigenous to Canada or Native to Canada, because the truth is, all of us are.
Right.
I don't know why we have to have a card to prove who we are and a word to prove who we are.
I mean, we could also put tattoos onto you too. They've tried that in other governments. Like, honestly,
it is.
You know, this is a racist apartheid system that Canada has, and people are defending it. So there's two views.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they defend Canada, then they're like, oh, these treaties are like sacred, we need to honor them forever. Other times when they're like against Canada, they're like, oh, these treaties were racist and they weren't even signed with in consent. And then it's like, tear the whole system down. Give me my land back. You hear a lot of people say, right?
Right. Which is ridiculous. I think ridiculous.
Because you're using the same argument to get to both points.
Right. Exactly. And like, I don't know. I think we're swinging so far one way and swinging the other way, and you know.
So let's just get together and like talk about it and agree, and like, okay, so what do you really think is going to happen here? We get independence, we negotiate in good faith with Indigenous peoples, bring them on board, native peoples, I guess, natives, and then we give them their reserves as like because like they don't own their reserve land right now. It's owned by the federal government. Like the treaties are all ceded land. They don't own anything.
Yeah. So when they're talking about running water on the reserves, right now every reserve in Canada gets their water trucked in. So every reserve in Canada. So the reserve that I'm from is literally, and a lot of reserves are so close to the towns. Like it's literally a road in between them.
Like just build a pipeline and bring the water over.
It's not that expensive and it's not that hard. But again, you have corruption on the reserves. The leaders don't want to allow that.
Well, in the treaties, it says that the government can take the land rights away again to build that kind of infrastructure. So I don't even see how there would be like any process like to block. Why wouldn't they build pipelines to bring water?
Wouldn't they? Why exactly?
It makes you suspicious. Like they're trying to really.
It's the same as trying to get a paved road on my reserve. Our band members have been asking for a paved road, and Chief stops it.
Huh.
So it's a fight against our own. It's a fight within our own culture.
Okay.
And don't believe that the Indigenous people, our natives, are not banging their head against a wall.
Right.
And not trying to fight for these things, because we're the ones who live it.
Yeah.
I'm the one who watched that, the water truck didn't get out to my uncle's house because, well, it just didn't show up that week, and his sewer's backing up and he's out of water.
Yeah.
Sorry, but no other Canadian in Canada in a town or living, they can just turn their water on and let it run for as long as they want. That water's always coming out.
Never gonna stop.
Never gonna stop. But
unless you live in Calgary.
Yeah. Exactly.
Apparently Calgary has a problem because their NDP mayor doesn't know how to build.
We recently just had a problem actually here in Linden. But we don't do rectified right away.
I had to throw that one in there. I'm sorry.
Yes. Right.
Well, this. Okay, so there's a lot of corruption on the reserves, and I just want to think like, what's our path forward here?
Our path forward, I believe, is to talk. I feel like talk and listen to each other. Okay. There's so much. The first rule of war is always divide and conquer. So I feel like we've been divided.
Yeah.
And we have to stop with the division. I don't know how we get to that point.
Yeah.
I'm all for that because I have a complete history of a white family, and then I also have a complete history of a native family.
Right.
And so I feel like we just need to get together and talk and listen to each other and have understanding and caring. But the thing is since 2015, this has all come bubbling up for all the Indigenous people.
Okay.
When this happened with the Kamloops school, I can't tell you how devastated, how much that ripped my heart out to hear of what happened with my family, because let's be honest, that was hidden from me too. I didn't know.
Right.
I had no idea that my grandmother was in a residential school for 13 years. Wow. And what she endured.
Yeah.
The reality of that explains my entire Native family. And the trauma and the alcohol and the drugs and the trauma, generational trauma is a real thing.
It's a real thing, and it's not going to go away. Like, we can't just throw more money at it and expect your culture to just throw off all the years of trauma.
That's right. And we're talking decades of trauma.
Yeah.
So we can't even begin to heal the trauma until we recognize the decades of trauma that's been bestowed upon this particular group of people in Canada. No other group has experienced this amount in Canada.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We did treat the Chinese pretty bad, especially during the railroad days.
But they're not from Canada.
I mean, look, okay, so now
I agree with you, yes.
I mean, here's my thing. It's like, I feel like it's the federal government, the government of Canada, that's holding us back.
Yes.
It's holding me back, it's holding you back.
Yeah.
And independence is an opportunity to bring us together and like really try to solve these problems.
Absolutely. Like an independent Republic of Alberta, like, man, how powerful that would be. And how amazing would it be to have our native cultures recognized and honored and practiced, and bring back our language and bring back and teach it.
Yeah. So here's what I would vote for this. I think we form like a federation, you know, maybe all the indigenous tribes, they kind of all get, you know, their own senators or something like that. So they have a real meaningful say in the government, and then they have sovereign territory with, we agree on a constitution, obviously, but then some things can be, you know, different on the reserves. I wouldn't call them reserves anymore. They'd be like sovereign countries.
Yes.
You know, like why not?
Let's remove the word reserve.
Like that's, but now the problem here is, so like this is how I understand it. If Indigenous people can't own their property, right, on the land,
right,
and so this actually is what's keeping them in a cycle of poverty.
That's right.
Because you need to own it. But then the risk is, let's say you start owning your property. You live on the reserve. You own I wouldn't call it reserve anymore, but you own your property, and then you sell it.
Yes.
And you sell it to some white people. And then all of a sudden it's no longer,
right.
It's no longer, you know, like,
right.
You know, and then it's conceivable that it could just completely get bought out, and then the land is not, you see what I mean? Like, it's a vicious cycle. You either get...
It is a vicious cycle, and we're in 2026. So,
yeah.
I mean, is there a pure race anymore? I don't know. So, you know, like, do we let it, you know, do we? Or do we try and keep it within our... I don't know.
If you keep it within,
yeah,
then the future is going to be the same.
That's right.
You're going to get nobody's going to take pride in their house. Nobody's going to maintain it. There's no equity building. There's no personal wealth building. The people live on the reserves. They're dependent on the state.
Right.
That's going to continue.
Yes.
If you flip over to a system where it's like now you personally own your property, then you risk, well, eventually it will happen. Eventually all the land will be bought out by other people who aren't Indigenous, because you can't just make a law where you can only sell it to Indigenous people. I suppose you could, but there you go with the racist card again, right? You're proving your race to be able to do a business transaction.
Right.
So it's more like this would be the beginning of the end. It's like, here you go, everybody gets their property, here's a payout for everything that we agree we owe.
Yeah.
The Indigenous people who live today get what they're deserved.
Right.
From the contract. And then going forward, it's like we're all just equal.
Right.
But then that's kind of the fourth option that I didn't really want to support. Right. And now here I find myself saying I support it kind of. I'm just talking out loud, by the way. I don't really know.
Right. And I don't know, is there a way that we can have maybe a little bit of that and a little bit of the other? I don't know. Because there has to be a way. There has to be a way.
Because I don't think Indigenous people would get on board with it if we were like, hey, we're going to just, you know, your land is no longer your land.
No, and
if there was any deal that wasn't that, you know, they wouldn't get on board with it.
Right. The people that I know who are supporting it want change. So whatever change that brings, they must believe that it's going to be better than the way that it's been. Meaning that they're tired of the poverty, they're tired of no voice, they're tired of being made to feel less than, and they just want change, and they want change for their families and for their people too.
Well, let me push back on our own argument here, like on our own side, like change for the sake of change isn't a good thing either. You know, sometimes it could be worse. We could make this worse. Like, that's a real risk. Like,
that is a real risk. And I mean, it could be great for the beginning, but then you obviously always have new leaders that come in, and then that's, you know, like we can never tell what the future is.
No.
That's one thing. Because again, I don't think the original treaties and such were done with malicious. I think it was the mentality at the time, and I think that people, not everybody, but I'm sure people had good intentions.
Right.
But as time has progressed, we've had different leaders, just like we have in Canada.
Yeah.
We have great leaders, and then we have not so great leaders.
Yeah.
So how do you maneuver that in the future? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. I don't think the treaties were signed with malicious intent per se. I think that genuinely they wanted, I think at the time the Treaty 8 sounded like almost all of the people, the native people were Christians. They already knew about, how the white men live. They just had, probably some skirmishes about, land, because miners were coming through and fur traders were coming in who weren't Indigenous and stuff.
Right.
And then they just signed a treaty to, have some peace, and then it made sense. Let's sign a race treaty, because I guess nobody envisioned, hundreds of years later, well, I guess almost 150 years later,
Yeah. Yeah.
the problems that we have now. So
Yeah. And I don't know if when you say Christian, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Catholic Christian or?
Okay, in the preamble to Treaty 8,
Yes.
there's a line where it says almost everybody with the exception of a few were Christians. It doesn't say Catholic, but I'm assuming they're Catholic because one of the signers to Treaty 8 was actually Father Lacombe.
Okay.
And so, I know that the Catholics had missions all over, and
Well, the Catholics are who ran the residential schools.
they ran the majority of them. Weren't there a couple other exceptions where like United Church or something? I thought there was.
Not that I know of.
So the Catholics ran all of it. They ran the majority.
Yeah. And to me, I actually went to my reserve for the first time probably 4 or 5 years ago, and boy, was I shocked when there was a Catholic church on my reserve.
Yeah. What? Well.
And I just found out just a few days ago, because there was residential school, and then after that, they had day school.
Right.
So the kids were taking school bus every day to the residential schools, but they came home.
Yeah.
So the reason that there's a Catholic church on our reserve is from the day school, because the day school people
Right.
did not endure all the trauma and the abuse,
Right.
because they were going to school and coming home.
Right.
So that's why, because
Are they still Catholic? Do they
and
still?
they're still Catholic and devout Catholic
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it shocks me because that's not the residential school survivors' viewpoint.
Right.
But the day school, absolutely, and I can understand that if they didn't endure massive trauma or couldn't could see their family every day, and there was like
Right.
a regular school, then why would you
Yeah.
not embrace the faith?
Well, this is something that's personally hard for me, right? Because my mom was a Catholic.
Right.
And, I think in her heart, she believed that what they were doing was good. And if she were here today, she would say, no, the residential schools, yeah, people died from cholera and stuff like that, but they were doing overall good. That's what she would say. And I think she would believe it in her heart too.
Yes, and I really, and I believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, nobody knew what a residential school was.
We didn't.
It was never talked about.
No.
So I believe that.
And the last one closed in 1995.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago.
It like I was alive back then.
Right.
And there were still kids getting taken away from their parents.
That's right.
So like, I blame the federal government for all this.
I blame the federal, and that's the problem, is that we need to stop blaming each other.
Yeah.
We need to lay blame where it needs to be laid.
Yeah.
And the reason for Alberta independence is because of the federal government that we're tired of.
Yeah.
As Albertans, not
Yeah.
just Indigenous, not just white, not just brown.
Right.
Our Alberta spirit is tired.
Yeah.
So we need to lay blame where it should be laid.
Right. And yeah, I blame, like, now Alberta can figure this stuff out. We can not repeat the mistakes of the past.
Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. for sure.
Huh.
Yep. And how that happens, I don't know. I mean, Alberta, we have a big problem. We have a big problem with drugs and alcohol in in our province.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
I've got family members that are dying because of it. And we need to clean up our own backyard.
Yeah, I mean, the death rate I was looking at is like 10 years less for the average Native man, right? Compared to the I'm using your right, non-Indigenous man, right? So like, there's a lot of problems.
Right now, across Canada, in all of the major cities in Canada, 95% of the homeless people are Indigenous people.
And the prison population is like overwhelmed too.
That's right. And the prison population, women alone, if you go to a women's prison and anywhere in Canada, you will find that it's 80 to 90% Indigenous women.
Right.
All of Canada, every city,
Yeah.
it is under 100,000 of homeless people we have. Okay?
Right.
Why? 95% of them are Indigenous. It is a fixable problem. Calgary alone, we have massive sky towers downtown that are empty. Why are we not building and helping our homeless?
Right.
Instead, we're treating them the exact same way they've always been treated, and 90% of them are natives, Indigenous.
Well, and I just look at it like, and might sound insensitive, but I feel like there's an entire class of people in our society who are engineered to be dependent on the government. And that's the Indigenous population.
Of course it is.
And like when you're dependent,
raised in poverty and you don't know and you can't believe any different, and your parents, this is where the generational trauma comes in.
Yeah.
So, yes, but they're raised in alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
Why? Because their parents were raised in alcohol and drugs. Why were their parents raised in alcohol and drugs? Because they were put into a residential school and traumatized.
Right.
Major trauma. We're not talking just slaps on the wrist.
Yeah.
We're talking rapes, beatings. I know a story of an Indigenous man in Canada who had, as an older man, he went to the doctor because his back was hurting.
Yeah.
So the doctor did x-rays on his back and said to him, "When did you break your back?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "I didn't."
Yeah.
And the doctor said, "Was there a time in your life when you were laid up in bed that you couldn't get out of bed?" And he goes, "Oh." He said, "Actually," he says, "when I was about 9 years old, I was in a residential school and we were starving." He said, "So I snuck down to the garden to get some turnips."
Yeah.
He said, "And the priest caught me and beat me with a 2x4. He said, "And after that, I was in bed for like months."
Wow.
He broke his back and didn't even know. All because he was trying to steal turnips for the other children.
Yeah.
So that is the truth. And whether Canada wants to believe it or not, the truth is the truth. The trauma happened. Every Indigenous person knows it and feels it. And that is what's happening.
I believe you. I'm just nervous that I think it's a good pushback to our side is that maybe we'll just repeat the mistakes again. You know, I want this independence movement to actually be a thing that solves problems, not just continues with the same old.
I want to see money given by the government or wherever we get it. I want to see it to help our people. To help get them out of poverty and get them out of drugs and get them out of the alcohol.
Right. Okay, but this was the pushback that I was kind of building to is like we have a group of people who are engineered to be dependent on the government, and that's keeping them in a cycle of poverty. And then my thinking is giving more money doesn't help.
Nope.
It's almost like there's a lost generation that's not going to come back, but then the future generations, you know, more employment opportunities, obviously education.
There is so much opportunities for Indigenous people. I have been railing at my nieces and nephews.
But
we have opportunities that are not given to every other Canadian.
Right.
And we are squandering it. We are wasting it. We have opportunities for education.
Yeah.
We have opportunities for businesses.
Yeah.
But again, it's the cycle of poverty that they just want to live in. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Or that they're not want to live in. Sorry, that's rephrase it. That they live in.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the solution is to give more money, but then if you're saying there's opportunities available and they're not taking it, then this kind of goes full circle. It's like we want the sovereignty. Okay, sure, have sovereignty, but if they're not, if the people aren't able to do it, if there's not enough competent leaders, and maybe, can I say this without being disrespectful? Like maybe the culture is so destroyed that it can't be saved. I don't know. I feel sorry to say that.
Right.
But like
that's sorrowful to me because it is a beautiful culture. It is the beliefs of the Indigenous Native people. It is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It is all about taking as little as you can and giving back as much as you can.
Right.
If you think about even portrayed in movies, natives that lived, they didn't just use one part of an animal. They literally used every single part of the animal.
Right.
And they thanked the animal.
Yeah.
The spirit of the animal for giving their life for their own sustenance.
I learned to do that from an Indigenous man that I hunt with.
And
I do that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're all connected. The truth is we are all connected on this earth.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if we could start teaching that again, because that's what's missing.
Well, and here's the thing is like it's only going to happen if Indigenous people do it to themselves, because non-Indigenous people can't tell Indigenous people what to do.
Nope.
And so we just need to like agree on a way that we can work together, and then
which is give it back to the Indigenous people. Like
give what back?
Give everything back to them. Let them let them take care of their families again. Stop taking the children from them. This is what we've been railing at, is that like I'm fighting right now the Alberta Family Services for my great niece and nephew. Yeah. And what we're railing at them is like, let us raise our children.
Okay.
As grandparents and aunts and uncles, we know how to raise our children.
Okay. Yeah.
Please stop keeping our children from us. Let us raise them.
Yeah.
Hence why we have Bill C-92. Hence why we have come to the forefront is that, yes, Native people should raise their children.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you clarified that, because I was trying to think, well, I was making a video like this with my flag, and some Indigenous people drove by in a car and they waved out the window at me and they're like, give us our land back. All right, and this is a thing I hear a lot, land back, land back. It's like, wait a minute.
So I don't know, I'm not sure when they're talking about land back. I mean, really, it's just that we, like Indigenous Native people, whether we came from somewhere else and came here and we're here, we were just this. They call it our land, but truly, the land doesn't belong to anybody. And our ancestors will tell you that. The land belongs to everybody.
Oh, and the land kind of belongs to whoever is living there, right?
And it belongs to whoever's living there.
Yeah.
We've just gotten this mindset that certain people, we've given it to our governing systems that tell us what we can do on it and what we to build on it, and it has all these rules. The truth is, nobody owns the land.
Well, I mean, the Queen owns the land. Or the king, right?
Yeah, and I mean, those days are gone. I really believe those days are far gone now. We don't need royal family BS. I mean, come on now.
No, but okay, so like give the land back, like.
I don't
okay,
know
where would I go? To me, that sounds like advocating for genocide. Because like, where would I go?
Because I'm like, what? But what are you talking about? Give the land back. This is land.
Yeah.
So. What are you talking about land? There's farmers' fields out here. Like, what land are they saying give us back?
Well, no, I think
Are they saying that do away with reservations and let us build our own wherever we want, or what are they saying?
I think that what they're advocating for, there's some serious people who think that all the land should just be handed back over to Indigenous people, Indigenous bands, and then we just like cede all of our power back to them.
Okay, and
like
so
crown power or whatever.
Okay, let's say we did that. Right now, I can definitely say that natives are not the best stewards of their land. The land they already have.
Well, yeah, you can make that argument. It's like if we give it back, you wouldn't be good with it.
Land, are you going to be a good steward of the land? like
Yeah.
our ancestors were, because they were good stewards of the land.
But like, I don't even think that's something we should even entertain. Like, give the land back. Like, come on.
It's not something
We're not
can
going anywhere.
do. We're not going, like, you can never change if you're looking backwards. You can never move forward if
Right.
you're always looking backwards. And
Right.
I live by that motto because it's really easy to live in the trauma and the sorrow and the shoulda, woulda, couldas.
Yeah.
But we all have to move forward and heal. I
Yeah.
have to heal so that my children can live in a free world
Right.
and not have to live under this thumb of being told who they are because of the color of their skin. So I feel like we need to move forward, not backwards, which means no, we don't give the land back. What does that even mean?
What does it even mean? what it means is, I think, well, what we should do, I mean, going forward is like, we all get treated fairly and equally. Every single one of us is a citizen of the Republic, and, you know, we have the same rights.
Right, which
You
means
know?
that we should have running water to every home.
Well, no, I mean,
And that is an entitlement of every single person. They should be able to turn their tap on, you know, and not have it run out.
wouldn't it be awesome if I think, you know what, I think we could say this, and I'm going to start saying this in more of my videos. Let's make a promise that if we win independence, we're going to just immediately start a massive water infrastructure project and build water infrastructure on all the reserves. Like, it'll be like the first year we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we do that? Surely with
I'm
the
for
$40
that.
billion, we're going to, let's do that.
Absolutely. I'm for that.
And it's like no strings attached. This is just because you're people and you get water.
That's right. I think everybody in Alberta should have that opportunity in
That's
a free and
awesome.
independent Alberta.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Whatever color you are. I don't care.
Yeah, and I mean,
I'm colorblind myself.
Well, and I mean, I think we can see colors,
We can see colors.
but like,
Unfortunately, do.
you know, I don't judge you I don't judge you as a lower, I judge you on your actions.
Actually,
know?
I will tell you what my race is. So I'm actually very, very unique.
Okay.
I am almost 50% of two pure races.
Okay.
I am 50% Indigenous Native
Okay.
and 50% East Indian.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
So when I say, so what's happening in Canada today with all of this, it really hits close to home for me, because if Canada had stuck to being Canada, just like any other country, when you go to their country, if I go to India, I can't dress like this. Okay, I have to wear a hijab. I have to abide by the country's rules of what they mandate. Because Canada has always been open to every other country except for the natives.
right.
Okay. In 1975, my mom and dad were together. My mom was 100% Native. My father's 100% East Indian. I've never met him.
Yeah.
He lived I don't even know if he's still alive, in Edmonton, Alberta.
Yeah.
Okay. So when his family, who came here,
Yeah.
found out that he was with my mother,
Yeah.
and he was with her until I was 8 months old. He knows who I am.
Yeah.
He loved me and my sister. When they found out he was with a non-East Indian, they sent him back to India to get married in an arranged marriage. And back then, you didn't have a choice.
Right.
But if Canada had said, no, this is the Canadian way.
Yeah.
No, you're not allowed to practice those traditions here. You can practice behind closed doors, but the Canadian way is that you can intermarry, you can be with who you want. You don't have to stick with your original race, right?
Okay.
Then I think that the trajectory of my life would have changed drastically.
Okay.
But at that age, he literally was sent back for an arranged marriage,
Right.
devastated and ripped out my mom's heart.
Yeah.
She was never the same again.
Wow.
And so I feel like this whole multicultural welcoming all these cultures shouldn't have happened. Like that, doesn't happen in every other country, any other country.
Yeah.
Sorry, not every other country, any other country.
Yeah.
If I go to Egypt,
Yeah.
I will be put in jail if I don't wear a full garb. I cannot go and have bare skin. I cannot go and speak English. In fact, if you go into Canada and to any city, you have Chinatown. But if you go to China, there's no Canadian town.
So like earlier, I quoted Treaty 8. I said half breed. I can already hear some of my viewers saying that. I can't stop what people say on the internet. Please don't be jerks, right? But like,
the reason they call half breeds is because it was think about when colonization happened.
yeah,
Okay. Some of the women and men freely took
Yeah.
wives or partners, and it was the French and the English because
Yeah.
that's who was here.
yeah,
And some of them didn't.
Yeah.
So some of it was forced upon them,
Yeah.
and those are what they're talking about, half breeds. So
Oh.
my great
because like,
grandmother, so my great grandmother,
let's go.
great grandmother, was with a Frenchman. That's where the French comes in with Indigenous people or Native
Okay.
people.
So okay, so that, I mean, I hate to use that term. It just sounds so disgusting.
So
to
when
me,
you
but
have what
they're
that
not talking
happens-
about. They're talking about white and
so
and native.
they call them half breeds, and there was such a I think that's just what they called them.
I don't even
back
think it
then
was
half-
derogatory. I just think that's
I don't
just.
think it was derogatory. I think that's just what they called
is
them.
now, but-
Today they call it Métis.
Oh yeah.
That's what Métis is. Métis is half native and half
Yeah.
non-native. That's
So,
what
but
they call it.
how do you get a treaty? I thought status Indian was like 100%.
No, status Indian has to do with if your family members were treaty. That's how that follows
That's
down.
it. It just
So
treaty
it does,
follows treaty.
There's people who are treaty status who are red-haired with freckles.
Yeah.
You'll find them in Newfoundland. There's people that have treaty status that do not look even remotely close to native. So
Right. Okay.
it has to do with
Huh.
your ancestry, and they follow your ancestry. But that's why it's so ridiculous that we have to prove what our race is.
Yeah, like I'm just thinking, man, what a convoluted system, and I just want to get away from it.
Yes.
And so, look, that was such a good conversation. I want to wind it down. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to say for the camera?
I just am all for this free and independent Alberta for every person, and I want it for my grandchildren. I want it for my whole Native family,
Yeah.
my whole white family, and I want us to come together because divide and conquer is the first rule of war, and
Yeah.
we need to come together. We are more than them.
Yeah.
And if we come together, I feel like we have a voice and we can make real change for every single person in
Yeah.
this province
Yeah.
and this soon to be hopefully country.
Yeah. I know, it gets me so excited to
It
think
does.
a country, hey?
Me too.
Like-
I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And, in your comments, please try to keep it civil. And I really want to hear some of the comments. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much. Cheers.